Hello and welcome to the Blue Open Studio tutorial video series. The topic of this video will be creating and opening screens. In this video, we will be discussing screen opening and closing behavior, and then we'll be demonstrating creating screens and screen groups, setting custom screen dimensions and opening positions, setting a startup screen or screen group, and configuring the startup options for the graphical user interface, sometimes called GUI, or what we call in Blue Open Studio, the viewer. I'd like to begin first by discussing screen opening and closing behavior inside of Blue Open Studio. There are 5 different selections for the screen behavior. The first is overlapped, which means it opens a screen without closing any other screens. Then there is pop-up, which forces a screen in front of all other screens but does not close them. Think of this as a standard pop-up window. Then we have dialog, which is similar to pop-up, except this is treated more as a system error or dialog message, meaning that it cannot be clicked around. No other screens can be manipulated. You need to interact and close this screen in order to enable any other screens inside of the application. Then we have replace partial, which opens screens and closes all other replace screens that it partially covers. By the way, this is the default selection for screens. And then we have replace complete, which is similar to replace partial, except that it will close any other replace type screens that it completely covers. And I have a demo application here open that shows exactly how this works. So for example, if I open overlap and I click on the dialog, we see the dialog come up. With dialog, I cannot select or interact with the application until I close the dialog window. Now I can open and close and manipulate and interact with the application. For example, here is our overlap screen. If I click on pop-up, the pop-up comes up above it but does not close it. If I close the screen below it, I open it again, it opens underneath the pop-up because a pop-up is treated as the very foreground, the very front or first window that you see. Now if I open my second overlapped and I open replace complete and I close it, overlapped is still there because a replace complete or replace partial will only close other replace type of screens. So for example, if I open replace complete 1 and I open replace complete 2 and I close it, you see that 1 has been automatically closed because it opened. Replace complete 2 right over top of it. Now if I have my replace complete 2 open and I open my replace partial, you see that it overlapped just slightly by 1 pixel. And because of this overlap, this one will close any other replace screen, whether it be complete or partial. For this training application that we will be creating, we set a resolution of 1024 pixels wide by 768 pixels tall. In the application, we will be creating 3 basic screens: a header across the top, a navigation across the left side, and then a main screen. And this main screen will be what will typically be changed when we switch or open or close screens. So right now, with a application resolution of 1024 by 768, in order to place all 3 of these screens as one screen during runtime, we have to set the dimensions and locations for each screen. So for the header, we already have an established width of 1024 pixels. We will give it a height of 150 pixels. For the navigation, we already have a height of 768, However, we have to subtract 150 from that in order to get the height of the header, and we will set the width at 150 pixels. Because of how screen graphics work, they originate from the upper left-hand corner of the screen, and that is a starting location of 0 and 0. So, for the main screen, for its height, along with the height of the navigation, if we have 768 pixels in height and we have to subtract 150, that gives us a height of the main and navigation screens of 618. And then for the width, we subtract 150 from 1024, we get a pixel width of 874 for the main screen. The startup position for the main screen is going to be 150 and 150. And that is because since we're starting at 0 and it's 150 pixels tall for the header, that's 0 through 149. The same holds true as the width for the navigation, so it's 0 through 149 from the left. The startup location for the navigation screen will be a top of 150 and a left of 0. And for the startup for the header will be 0 and 0. After we have the BOS training application opened in our development environment, to add the screens, we come over to the Project Explorer and make sure the Graphics tab is selected. Then we come up to the Screens folder, right-click, and select Insert. For the screens we're creating, for some of them I'm going to put in a description, although it's not mandatory. I'm going to create the header screen first, so I'm just simply going to give it a description of header. The one piece of information that is important when you first configure is the size. Although all this information can be modified at a later time, you do need to put a size in here. And by default, it selects to the resolution that was configured when the application was first created. Since we're creating the header, we know that the width is correct. However, the height needs to change from 768 to 150. Location is correct because it is the very top screen in the group based on the diagram we saw previously. And we're going to leave the style as replace partial. Once you have the information entered, click OK, and our new screen appears. I am going to change the background color to make it stand out from the other screens in the group. So I will right click and select background color, drop this down, and I'm just simply going to select the very color right below the one currently selected, which is white background, darker by 5%. Once I select it, I can click apply, and I see the color automatically change. And now I will save the screen. Several different ways to do that. You can click on the X to close. You can come up to the quick access bar and click on save, or in the application menu and click save. On the save as dialog, it comes up in the screen subfolder of the application directory. And this is where all the screens are typically stored. For this one, I'm going to name it header. Click save. The next screen I'm going to create is the navigation screen. So once again, I will right click on screens, select insert, put in a description of navigation. The navigation screen was that small strip on the diagram on the left-hand side. So we know the width needs to change to 150, and the height, because it is under the header screen, needs to change to 618. The location, once again, it's positioned under the header screen, so the top will need to change to 150. Because remember, resolution is 0 based, so 0 to 149 is where the header is located. So 150 is the very next free pixel without any overlap. We're going to leave the style as replace partial, and then click OK. I'm going to come up to the application menu and click save as, and then I'm going to save this screen as the navigation. The next screen I'm going to create, after I right-click and select Insert, will be the template screen. I'm going to leave the description blank for this one. I'm going to set the width to 874 and the height to 618. And because this screen will now rest below the header and next to the navigation screen, I need to change the location. So I'm going to set the top to 150 and the left to 150. And leave the style as replace partial. Click OK. And I will also change the background color for this screen as well. Right click, select background color, then I drop this down. And I'm going to select the blue accent, lighter 80%. Click apply. And now I can come up and select save all, which will save any changes to any screens that have been made. And if anything new has been created, it will prompt me to save that as well. Now I'm going to name this template. And now I can come up and I'm going to save this template screen off as a new screen labeled main. Now, if I expand the screens folder, I see I have my 4 screens that I've created. Now, we've created a few screens, but if we start the runtime right now, we are going to see nothing but a blank screen. And this is because we have not configured a startup screen. So I am going to tab back over to my development and stop the runtime, which by the way can be done on the quick access bar at the top or on the home tab for the ribbon under local management. So now we need to set our startup screens. Now we discussed a screen group, and you can either configure a single screen by right-clicking and select set as startup, or you can select an entire group as the startup, but first you have to create the group. And to do that, we right-click on screen group and select insert screen group. And that comes up now with the insert screen group dialog. For the name, I'm going to call it startup, and I am going to select the screens I want. In this case, the header, the main, and navigation. And then I click OK. And now under screen group, I see my startup group and the listed screens. And from here, I can double click on these as well to open them to edit, along with doing it under the screens folder as well. Now I have the startup group configured, but I do not have it selected to startup. So I will right click on the startup.sg folder and select set as startup. So now if I start the runtime, I now see that I have my 3 screens, my header, my navigation, and my main. By the way, to switch between the development and the runtime, you can simply Alt-Tab, and it will switch between the 2 applications. I will now stop the runtime, and I will come up to Project and to Viewer. And this gives me the properties of the viewer or the runtime. And right here you see that I have my startup screen as startup screen group. I can also come here to change that for whatever screen I want as the startup, as the initial screen that is displayed when the runtime starts. For development, I find it a good practice to uncheck Start Maximized, select Resize Border, and select Title Bar. And also to check Auto Screen Scaling. Now what these do is once I uncheck Start Maximized, it will now start the runtime in a windowed mode versus in maximized. The resize border will allow me to resize the screen that I see. And the title bar gives me something to grab onto so I can move the window around. Auto screen scaling allows you to start the application in the resolution that we have selected. But if we have to resize the window or we load the application onto a computer with a different screen resolution, it will automatically scale to best fit that resolution. So once I click OK to come out of here, if I click Start, I open the runtime, I now see that I have my title bar and it's in windowed mode with the resize border. As you can see, as I resize it, it will adjust the screen to best fit the resolution I have selected for the window. As we saw with the demo application at the beginning of this video, the way the screens are configured as far as the screen type, how they are laid out, and the order in which they are opened can determine the behavior of the application as a whole. So I want to show you an example with our application of laying out the screens and what issues you may run into if that is done improperly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify the main screen attributes. If you recall, we set up the header, the main, and the navigation screens all to be a replace partial. And we laid them out to where they are side by side. But if we go into the screen attributes for the main, and we set the location of the top at 149 and the left at 149, we are now going to be overlapping the header and the navigation each by 1 pixel. So if I save and I run, as you can see when I open, I only have my navigation screen that is appearing. That is because of our startup order. So if I go back in and I right click on my startup screen group and I set open order, you see that it first opens the header, then the main, then the navigation. The reason why the navigation screen is the only one displayed is because it was the last one open. So what happened is the header opened, then the main opened over top of the header, which closed it, and then the navigation opened over top of the main, which closed it, leaving only the navigation screen visible. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact ProFace America Technical Support by phone at 1-800-289-9266, option 2, or by email, support@profaceamerica.com. You can also visit our website, profaceamerica.com, for manuals, drivers, product FAQs, and other product and software information. Thanks again, and have a great day.